All right, good morning again. Welcome back. Or maybe, whatever, doesn't matter. Anyway, we are beginning a new series called Table Manners, where we're taking a look at the way Jesus said and did things at the last meal that he shared with his disciples. The reason why we're taking a look at this is, one, he did and said some things that were unexpected and kind of odd and flipped the script on a bunch of different things. But also, the things that he said and did were kind of like potentially offensive in the way that he said things, the way that he did things, and they were his last opportunity to instruct his followers. It was his last chance to be like, hey, here's what I want you to go do. When you go out into the world, don't forget about this. Right? We tend to, I don't know if this is the case for you, but I feel like we tend to pay attention to people's final words or their final actions. It doesn't necessarily mean when it's the end of their life necessarily. It could be at the end of someone's life, but it could also be when they transition from one position to another. Or maybe there's a person who's, been a teacher for 35 years, and now they're finally, retiring, and they give advice to their fellow teachers or their students. They're like, here's something I want you to remember. We tend to lean in when we know somebody's at the end of their time. And that's the case with Jesus. He's at the end of his time. He knows that in a few hours from this meal, he's going to be arrested. He's going to be executed. He's going to be crucified. So the things that he says are really vitally important. So we're going to lean in. Could you imagine if you were, I don't know if you're a fan of any sports teams, but imagine your favorite teams is playing in the Super Bowl, and there's one timeout left before the end of the game. If the score is tied, they have the ball. You know that their last huddle is going to be vitally important. How much would you pay to get in on that conversation, to know what is the quarterback telling the players right now? How much would you pay to hear what he's trying to get them to do? Or maybe you have a favorite band and they're doing their farewell tour, and usually before a group goes out to perform a concert, they gather one last time before they all take the stage. Imagine your favorite band, farewell tour, last chance to huddle before the concert. How much would you pay to weigh in on that, to hear what they're talking about, to just kind of be in their space at that time? Fortunately for us, we have that. The gospel writers record what happens at this meal. Jesus is with his followers, and we get to take a peek inside of this meal. But there's one other thing that I think is actually even more worth paying attention to. Another reason why we should listen in and pay attention to what Jesus said and did. It's because he actually, at this meal, he said, I want you guys to keep doing this. Indefinitely. Don't stop doing these things. Don't stop what I have started. I want you to carry on this mission. And for that reason, I think it's important that we take a look at these words. What was he trying to get everyone to do? What is it that he wants his followers to leave this meal with? What is so important that he's this is the last chance. Don't miss this. And that's why I think we should take some time and pay attention to Jesus' manners at this table. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at John chapter 13. Now, John is the name of one of the Gospels. That's one of the accounts of Jesus' life. We have 4 of them. We have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And in John's account, we're sitting at this meal, and there's 4 chapters. We're not going to cover all 4. It's a lot. We're going to cover part of one today. But at that meal, he says some incredible things to his followers. Things that they didn't like, that sometimes when I read, I'm like, I'd rather have it the other way around. He tells them hey, what's going to happen is I'm going to leave. I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be killed. But it's actually good, because instead of me being here, I'm going to give you my Spirit, the advocate, the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, I don't know. I think I'd rather have the real Jesus. I'd rather have the real deal. I'd rather have him right in front of him. But he's like, no, you don't get it. It'll be better, because now my location won't determine what happens. God's Spirit will live in and through each of you if you're a follower of me. I'm like, okay, I kind of get that. I still maybe would like the other one. But anyway, he says all these incredible things, and John records them for us, fortunately. And we have his account that we can look into. So we're going to jump right into it at chapter 13, and this is what it says. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So in this moment, and John's setting it all up, he's like, for us, the readers that is, Jesus is aware of the situation before him, And he understands that literally God has given him all power, which that's a big idea. Like all authority, all ability, all knowledge, all wisdom. Because at this point, Jesus has demonstrated to his followers and to those crowds watching that he's not just a teacher. He's more than that. He's done miracles. He's turned water into wine. He's walked on water. He's told the waves and the wind to just stop, and they do. And just recently, in chapter 12, I believe it is, of John, he raises Lazarus from the dead. This guy who was dead for days comes out of a tomb, not even smelling of death. So it seems like Jesus has control over all things, the entire universe. And John's like, he knew that that was the case. Like, he's got all the power, all the authority, all of everything. And he knows that he came from God and he's going to be returning to God. Now, I've never been in that situation where I've had all power and all authority. But I think about like, okay, what would I do? Like, I'm a guitar player, right? If I had all ability and all guitar playing prowess that ever could exist, like I'm better than anyone that's ever been before me, currently, or going to live after me. I'm better than all of them. What would I do with that? I'd put on the world's greatest concert. And I'd be like, get a load of this. Like, I would play to my heart's content and just show the world what I'm capable of. But Jesus does something different. He doesn't utilize his power to demonstrate power and seize power the way perhaps some of his followers would have liked. So the next verse starts with, so he, knowing that he had all authority and all power, everything was in his hands, because God placed it there. This is what he does. It says, so he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. You're probably like, okay, he's going to go for a dip. He's going to go for a swim? That's what you do with all power? No. I mean, I'm sure if you were in that room and you were one of the disciples, even knowing what the culture was like, you'd be like, whoa, this is odd. And John continues and writes, after that, Jesus, poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. When the guy who had demonstrated power over life and death realized he had all power, all control, he washed their feet. Can we have that slide? He washed their feet. He didn't go out and be like, now that I know I have all power, like, check me out. He's like, no, let me bend down, stoop down, and wash my followers' feet, which was so wrong on so many levels, so out of the norm. Like, he flipped the script big time for many reasons. Number one, their feet were really dirty. Their feet were kind of gross. Not just like the way I don't know if they took care of their nails or anything, but they wore sandals and they walked everywhere pretty much, unless they were wealthy enough to have an animal that could take them on like a camel or a horse or something. They walked, and the roads weren't paved and they weren't nice sidewalks. They were dirt. So their feet were covered in dirt. And washing your feet before a meal or getting your feet washed was kind of normal, because the way they would eat their meals, they would recline like at the table. Like, they weren't high tops with, bar stool chairs or anything like that. They were like laying down with their feet at the same height as their faces, pretty much. But number two, normally, what would happen in a Jewish household is that a servant, a specifically non-Jewish servant, would be the one to wash everyone's feet. Like, a Jewish person wouldn't do that. The host or whoever's hosting the meal would hire or have a servant on hand to wash all of the guests' feet. But that's not the case here. There is no servant. There's no person here to wash the feet. So then three, the rabbi, the teacher, the one who's like in authority above his own students, you would think maybe they're like, well, I guess nobody's washing our feet, so I guess we'll wash our own feet. They didn't even do that. So then their teacher, the one who's in a place of honor, who's looked at as a person of respect, worth following, gets down on his knees and gets a towel and a basin and washes each of their really, really dirty feet. It's totally backwards, totally upside down. And then fourth, Jesus often talked about how he was different. He was from God. He wasn't just simply a man. Like he was one of God's own. Later in the same book, he talks about how he and the Father are one, that he and God are the same thing. Like he's God's own son. Like he's the king over the universe. And this king has decided to stop, to get on the ground, to get low, and scrub the dirt off his own students' feet. And man, if we were in that room, we'd be like, this is totally messed up and totally weird. The disciples dropped the ball majorly. How is it that we don't have a servant here to wash everyone's feet? And now the guy in charge is doing it? And Jesus goes from the first disciple to the second and washes all 12. One of the guys actually speaks up. His name is Peter. Now, Peter is one of these 12 disciples. Maybe you've heard him like St. Peter, right? Like St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome, like in the Vatican. That's Peter. Like he's one of Jesus' followers, right? He's a knucklehead. Like he rarely gets it right, but he's like often the only one to speak up and to kind of go for it. Like if you've ever done the I said this, you heard that test, he'd be all red. He just like, I don't have a plan, I'm just going in this direction. And he speaks up and he says crazy things, and Jesus is always like, Peter, you just don't get it, my man. Like I appreciate the attempt, right? A for effort. So Peter, like Jesus comes up to Peter, he's gonna wash his feet, and Peter says this. He says, he came to Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Like, are you sure about this? This is not okay. You're not supposed to be doing this. A teacher shouldn't be seen doing this. A rabbi should not be seen doing this. Like, please don't do that. And Jesus replied to him, you do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. He's like, yeah, I'm about to wash your feet, Peter. Like, too bad. But this is like a foreshadow of a much bigger thing. You're not really going to get it. In time, you will come to understand. You will come to understand so much so that you will give your life for the mission that I have started with you and your friends. Right now, you don't really get it, but that's okay. And Peter, again, just love the guy. He goes, no, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. Like, Jesus, you're nuts. Let me tell you how it's supposed to go. You don't wash my feet. If anything, I should be washing yours. Like, you will never touch these gross feet of mine. Because Peter knew that this wasn't okay, that this was really uncomfortable, that this was totally backwards, that the rabbi, the teacher, the Lord, the king, the person who is supposed to be in the place of honor at a thing, they're not supposed to be on the ground. We're supposed to be doing that for him. It would be like as if we went to a retirement party, like all of us, tonight. There's a big retirement party, somebody working 45 years in an industry, they're retiring, and we all go there, no flowers, no gifts. We're just going up there, and one of us, it gets pointed at by the person who we're supposed to be celebrating, goes, you know what? I want you to sit in the place of honor. Also, I got you something. And he hands them a gift. And he hands them flowers, and you're just sitting there like, you're the person who's now been selected, and you're like, this isn't supposed to be about me, and I forgot the gift, but now you're giving me something. Like, the awkwardness of the situation is like just so strong. And if it's hard for you and I to get this, I have an image I want to show you that might help. This guy, not that important, just kidding. You've probably heard of this guy. This is Donald Trump. For some people, for a lot of people, this man is a hero. Like he's the hope that we've been waiting for. For a lot of people, this man is a villain. And either way, it is not crazy to think that Jesus would wash his feet. And if that doesn't hit home, here's another image. Do you remember her? For a lot of people, she was a threat to what we call America. For others, it was perhaps another chance to bring things back to the way they ought to be. But either way, it's not crazy to think that Jesus would wash her feet. And then there's another image where you and I could go. And I try to be the hero in my own story. I try to be the good guy. I try to do the right thing, particularly when it comes to my own family, but I drop the ball majorly. And I mess things up. And oftentimes I'm the villain in my own story. I'm the one who's the worst in my own story. And I don't deserve to be in this chair. But Jesus said, no, I'm gonna wash your feet. And how about you? We can't even live up to our own standards, let alone any of the ones that Jesus has set for us. And yet, it's not crazy to think that he would wash your feet. And I feel like for a lot of Christians, like who either know the story or just have been a follower of Jesus for a long time, you've thought about this and you're like, there's no way I would let him wash my feet. If anything, I'm so appreciative, I'm so grateful, I'm so thankful that I would wash his feet 1,000 times before I'd ever let him come near me and wash my feet. Like there's just no way. I can't, with all that gratitude that I have, it would be disrespectful for him to do that for me. And if that's you, then you're a lot like Peter as well. Because Peter's like, no, Jesus, you will never wash my feet. That's not how this is supposed to go. And Jesus responds to him with the following. He says, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. And he's not just talking about the feet thing, though he is talking about that as well. He's talking about what we've been talking about these last few weeks, where there's an infection in the human heart, that there's a problem, and we demonstrated that with the picture of the spotted lanternflies. Like they don't belong here, and they're invasive, and they're taking over, and we have to stamp them out. But Jesus shows them, he's like, look, I'm here to resolve and to fix the corruption that exists in every person's heart. I'm trying to push hell out of your heart so we can bring the kingdom of heaven into each person and into this world through those people. And if you don't let me wash you, if you don't let me deal with the source of the infection, if you don't let me deal with what's going on inside of your heart, you can't be a part of what I am doing. It's not a threat. It's like, look, you don't get it. You want to follow me? You want to be a Christian? You want to be a follower of Jesus? If that's the case, you have to let me get down on the ground and clean you up a bit first, so that you can then take that cleanliness and bring it into other people's lives. That you can help push the hell out of this world by being a part of the kingdom of heaven. And Peter responds and he's like, well, if that's the case, then not just my feet, Lord, my head also. And Jesus is like, again, Peter, dude, like, calm yourself. He's like, if you're mostly clean, it's probably just your feet that need a bath. And Peter's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. After he finishes washing his disciples' feet, it says this. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. And he turns to them and says a question. He asks them a question. He says, do you understand what I've done for you? He asked them. And they respond with silence. No one's talking. Everyone's probably just looking around the room like, who's going to be the bonehead to answer this guy first? And no one says anything, not even Peter. I don't know if it's because they're embarrassed. They're in shock at the situation, like, I can't believe we just messed this up so bad that Jesus got on the ground to wash our feet. Like, truthfully, this type of situation would be humiliating. If you were a rabbi or a teacher, to be in that position, you would lose respect. You would lose clout in the culture, because that's not what you do when you have followers. You're the one in charge. You don't do that. It'd be humiliating for the disciples to let this take place. Like, they're not good disciples, right? They're almost taking advantage of their rabbi. And what's interesting is that the way in which Jesus humbles himself to the position of a servant, the same root word for humility is the same root word for humiliation. That the humiliation in this humility is the point. Jesus is like, I'm trying to show you this is what I'm about. Like, service to one another is what I'm about. And Jesus says this. He says, you call me teacher, like rabbi, teacher, the one instructing you. And you call me Lord, meaning master, the one in charge, the one who calls the shots. You do that rightly, because that's what I am, for that's what I am. And he continues, now that I, your teacher, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. If you want to be a part of what I am doing, you need to let me wash you first. And then I want you to go do the same for others. I want you to go out there and wash one another's feet. That's what he calls them to. That's the mission That's the call of a Jesus follower. Not to just learn, though that's great. Not to just sit around and pray, that's great. Not to come to services and to hang out, all of that is great. But it's to lead to this. And for his followers, just in case they didn't get it, he spells it out super clearly in the next verse. It says that Jesus said, I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Like, you can't miss it. What I just did, when I got down to wash your dirty feet, I want you to do the same for others, whether it be literally, the washing of feet, or figuratively, the helping, getting the hell out of people so that the kingdom of heaven can take root there. So that's it. We do as he has done for us. That's what it means to be a follower of Jesus. That's what it looks like, to be in service towards everybody. But then we ask all sorts of questions, and we kind of get things in the way to try to distance ourselves from having to do this sometimes. And it's not meant to be an accusation, it's just the reality. Sometimes we're like, well, then who? And to how much? And to what extent? Let's be real about this. Jesus, how far should I go with this? And that's where I go. I try to think about it so much or try to plan it out so much that I end up becoming less useful or I'm less apt to actually do it. You want to know how far this goes? Well, in one of the 12 disciples, one of the guys there was Judas. You maybe have heard this name before. He's the one that betrayed Jesus. Which, just imagine the scenario. John tells us that Jesus knew that this was going to happen, that he knew that Judas had just come from visiting with the religious leaders of the day to sell him out so that Jesus could get arrested by Rome and then be tried and seen as a criminal and one trying to stir up an insurrection from within the society. And yet, when Jesus got to Judas, he wasn't like, not you. But rather, he still washed the guy's feet, knowing that those clean feet would put on sandals and eventually sell Jesus out. And there's something about that. I on one hand, I'm like, the regular human part of me is like, come on, Jesus, he's taking advantage of you. Punch him in the face. Show some actual power here. But then there's another side where I'm like, what is that? That in the face of an enemy, in the face of somebody who's been with you for years, who has seen you do incredible things, and still sells you out, you serve him. You love him till the end, all the way through and through. I don't know, maybe Jesus was thinking, perhaps this would be enough to change this guy's mind. Maybe this would be the thing that'll help him get it. But that is to the degree to which Jesus served, where he would wash the feet of a guy who would betray him. I can't even wish well the people who cut me off by accident on the road. Instead of being like, oh, let me pull over, let me wash your car for you. I'm like, let me give him a gesture. Particular, you know, particular finger to help explain how I feel, right? That's how we get to total strangers who do accidental things that don't actually hurt us. I'm probably not the only one, but the anger and the self-righteousness that rises up over something as small as that. And Jesus is like, no. Anybody who's going to betray you, serve them. And you're like, whoa, you sure? You sure about this, Jesus? This is what you want? And it's that is to the degree at which I have loved my own, and that's the degree to which I want to love and serve all of you. And so we're called to this, to love to that degree, to serve to that degree, to care for, not just the ones we like, the ones we love, the ones that are easy. I have 2 kids at home, and I think about them, right? I give my daughter a bath a couple times a week, a couple times a week at night. I get to wash her feet. That's easy. I love her. But what about the guy that stole my first electric guitar 20-something years ago? If I ever met him, would I be like, hey, bud, I just want to let you know I'm going to wash your feet? No, I'd want to hurt the guy. Be like, you ruined my life for a while. I was so mad. Still working through it. What about the people in your lives? Right? There are some people it's easy to serve, right? They're grateful, right? And they love back really, really well. And not that you're doing it so that they scratch your back, but you do it, and then when it doesn't go well, it feels like discouraging. You're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And Jesus is like, no. All the way. All the way. That's what it means to be a follower of Jesus. But here's the catch, right? That's the doing part. But if we do it out of our own strength, if we do it out of our own ability, our own patience and kindness, we run out. We're finite beings with a finite amount of all those things. And this is why we have to focus here. You love to the extent in which you are loved, right? We forgive to the extent in which we appreciate how much we've been forgiven by God. We welcome those to the extent in which we understand how much we have been welcomed. We serve to the degree in which we understand how much we have been served by God. Some of us need to spend time here, and others of us have spent so much time here, we need to kind of start doing this part and start serving. Because Jesus, right, he knew that he had all authority, all power, so he got on his knees and washed his disciples' feet. What about me? I know that I have been given things by God, that my life, my ability, my time, my efforts, my family, my finances, these are things that God has given me. So I'm going to try to use and leverage those things to serve others. It would be a shame for me to know that I look at my wife and my children as gifts from God, and so I spend my time doom scrolling instead of hanging out with my kids. It would be a shame to know that I see these things as a gift from God, and yet I don't serve my wife and make it easy for her to be my wife. But how about you? Beyond just your home, like if even, like it's not just about the people that are in the closest proximity. There are people that you're probably thinking of, you're like, this person's not easy to serve. But if you try to serve only in your strength, it may not go the way you want it to or the way we expect it to. But if we serve those people, remembering how much we have been served, it doesn't necessarily make it easy, but it makes it worthwhile. And here's how I know that. Because Jesus kind of made a promise at the end of this scene. He says this, talking to his 12. Now that you know these things, now that you see me demonstrate service, love, sacrificial kindness towards you, now that you know these things, that you've seen actually me do this for like 3 years, here's what he says. He says, you will be blessed if you do them. Not just sit and think about them forever. Not just know them, though knowing is great. Pondering and thinking is great. Praying about these things, talking with friends, all of those things are great. But it's in the doing of them that you will experience blessing. And that word there, literally, like the easiest way to understand the word blessing means happy. You will be happy. You will feel joy. You will feel purpose. You will have peace. You will have wholeness and fulfillment if you do them. That is the promise of being a Jesus follower. That in this life you can find purpose and peace and fulfillment and wholeness if you do the things that Jesus did. Again, not in our own strength, but in a response to the measure and degree to which we have been served by him. So that's the call. And I think it's attractive. I'm like, man, there's something about his selfless, sacrificial way that I want to be a part of. And if you want to be a part of that too, it takes a step. You start following him so that you get to know him. You be with him in order to become like him and to do as he did. And I think that if we were to do this, if the Christians just in this church alone started to do this, if the people who just call themselves followers of Jesus decided to do this, we could change our culture. Not just in the building. I'm talking about beyond these walls, in our neighborhoods, in our societies, in our families. And if the Christians of this world actually spent more time on the doing part as a response to what Jesus has done for us, it could change everything. And it did 2,000 years ago, and it can still do that today.